He commanded a tech empire worth billions from his glass tower. She survived in a makeshift shelter beneath the city's bridges. When Ethan Vance discovered Lila Monroe was carrying his quadruplets, his perfectly calculated world collapsed. Have you ever wondered what happens when two people from completely different worlds collide? What would you do if a single chance encounter completely transformed everything you believed about success, worth, and connection? Tonight, I'll share the extraordinary story of Ethan Vance and Lila Monroe, a tale that will challenge everything you thought you knew about love, destiny, and second chances. Ethan Vance wasn't just wealthy, he had revolutionized the digital landscape. His name graced magazine covers, his companies dominated markets, and his innovations shaped how millions lived their daily lives. From his penthouse overlooking the city, he controlled an empire with clinical precision, analyzing data and predicting trends with remarkable accuracy. But algorithms can't warm an empty bed at night. All the code in the world can't decode human connection. Despite his billions, Ethan's life was a masterclass in isolation. Meticulously scheduled meetings, carefully curated public appearances, and a profound emptiness he refused to acknowledge. Meanwhile, 17 floors below the gleaming corporate headquarters of Vance Technologies, Lila Monroe gathered her few possessions as morning light crept across the concrete underpass she called home. Once a promising student with dreams of becoming a teacher, a series of devastating setbacks had stripped away everything except her dignity and determination. Lila wasn't just surviving, she was observing, learning, and maintaining her humanity despite circumstances that would crush most spirits. The same city that celebrated Ethan's genius barely noticed her existence. The same streets that carried his luxury vehicles were where she searched for shelter each night. Two lives running parallel but never meant to intersect, until fate intervened on a rain-soaked evening that would change both their stories forever. A billionaire who built algorithms but never relationships and a homeless woman with nothing but dignity are about to discover that true innovation happens in the human heart. When Ethan's car breaks down in a downpour, leaving him stranded in an unfamiliar part of the city, it's not his executive assistant who comes to his rescue. It's not his board members or tech colleagues. It's Lila, offering help without knowing his net worth, his influence, or his power. That single act of kindness creates a connection neither expected. But connections aren't always neat and predictable. They don't follow business plans or quarterly projections. They evolve, deepen, and sometimes lead to consequences that defy all calculation. Will their fragile connection survive when a shocking pregnancy revelation changes everything? Stay with me to witness how an unlikely encounter becomes an extraordinary journey of transformation. This isn't just a love story. It's an exploration of what happens when wealth meets wisdom, when privilege confronts perseverance, and when two people from opposite ends of society discover that human value can't be measured by bank accounts or social status. What begins with a chance meeting during a thunderstorm culminates in a revelation that will test both their convictions. Lila is pregnant, not with one child, but 4. Quadruplets. Ethan's quadruplets. How did it happen? What choices will they make? And how will this unexpected development reshape their understanding of family, responsibility, and love? Like this video and subscribe if you believe that true connection can transcend social barriers. Hit that notification bell to join our community of storytellers and dreamers who understand that the most powerful narratives are built on human connection. As we follow Ethan and Lila's journey, you'll witness how privilege confronts prejudice, how corporate power faces human vulnerability, and how an unplanned pregnancy becomes the catalyst for profound personal evolution. Get comfortable and prepare yourself for a story that proves the most valuable innovations aren't created in laboratories or boardrooms, but in the unexpected spaces where different worlds collide. The sun rose over the Manhattan skyline as Ethan Vance completed his morning routine with mathematical precision. 5:30 a.m., wake up. 5:35, cold shower. 6 a.m., protein shake and review of international market reports. By 7, he was already in the back of his custom Tesla, scrolling through emails while the city slowly awakened outside his tinted windows. "And your coffee, Mr. Vance?" his assistant said, handing him a perfectly temperature-controlled cup. "Black, no sugar." "And the board wants to confirm the 9 a.m. presentation on the neural interface prototype." Ethan nodded without looking up from his tablet. "Tell them I've revised the projections. The market penetration estimates were too conservative." At 37, Ethan had built VanceCore Technologies into a $78 billion empire. His innovations in artificial intelligence and human-computer interfaces had revolutionized everything from medical diagnostics to educational platforms. The media called him brilliant, visionary, ruthless. No one called him lonely. The elevator whisked him directly to the 65th floor executive suite, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of Manhattan. His office, minimalist, white, clinical, reflected his approach to life, streamlined, functional, devoid of unnecessary sentiment. Neural mapping division exceeded quarterly targets by 18%, his CFO reported during the morning briefing. Asian markets are responding exceptionally well to the BrainSync educational software. Ethan barely registered the praise. Day acceptable. But we need to accelerate development on the emotional recognition algorithms. Our competitors are gaining ground. His day unfolded like every other. Meetings with developers, calls with investors, decisions that would affect millions of users and thousands of employees. Lunch was a protein bowl eaten at his desk while reviewing code. Dinner was often skipped entirely. "And Mr. Vance, your mother called again," his assistant mentioned cautiously at 7 p.m. "She says it's been 3 months since you've spoken." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Send the usual flowers and restaurant reservation for her birthday next week. Tell her I'm in Singapore for the tech summit." He wasn't going to Singapore. He simply couldn't bear another conversation about settling down, about the emptiness of success without family, about how his father would have wanted more for him than endless work. At midnight, when the office had emptied, Ethan stood at the window of his corner office. 65 floors below, millions of lights glowed across the city, each representing lives being lived, connections being made, stories unfolding. Meanwhile, he remained alone in his tower, surrounded by awards and achievements that had long since ceased to bring him joy. His penthouse apartment occupied the top 2 floors of an exclusive building. The smart home system recognized his arrival, automatically adjusting lighting, temperature, and cueing his preferred evening soundtrack, classical piano, that played to an audience of none. He poured himself 2 fingers of 18-year-old scotch and sank into his custom leather chair, tablet in hand to review tomorrow's schedule. A notification appeared. Forbes had just named him most influential tech leader for the 3rd consecutive year. Ethan closed the notification without reading the article. What good was influence when the only person he truly influenced was himself? What use was revolutionary technology when his own life remained static, programmed, predictable? He set down his glass and walked to the bedroom, passing walls adorned with modern art he'd purchased because a consultant told him they were valuable investments, not because they moved him. His king bed, perfectly made, rarely disturbed, awaited him like it did every night, alone. Tomorrow would be the same, and the day after, a life of extraordinary success and profound emptiness, all wrapped in the cold comfort of control. 20 blocks away and 60 floors down, Lila Monroe awakened to the first hint of sunrise filtering through the plastic tarp sheltering her small corner of the world. She had positioned her makeshift bed between 2 concrete pillars under an overpass, a location she'd chosen carefully for its relative safety and protection from the elements. "Morning, Charlie," she whispered to the scruffy terrier mix curled against her side. The dog had found her 3 months ago, skinny and trembling in the rain. Now they took care of each other. Another day, another adventure. Lila's morning routine was as structured as Ethan's, but driven by necessity rather than preference. She needed to pack her few possessions before the morning police sweep. She needed to reach the public restroom in Jefferson Park before the morning crowd to wash up properly. She needed to be at the downtown library when it opened to use the computers for job applications. At 29, Lila's life bore no resemblance to what she had once imagined. The framed teaching degree that had filled her with such pride now sat in a storage locker she could barely afford, the last physical reminder of the life she'd lost 3 years ago. "Good morning, Ms. Monroe," called the librarian as Lila entered precisely at 9 a.m. "And your usual computer is free." "Thanks, Rita. Any luck with those teaching assistant listings you mentioned?" The librarian shook her head. "Nothing yet, but I'll keep looking." Lila spent 2 hours meticulously filling out applications, attaching her carefully maintained resume with its gap-filled employment history. She'd become an expert at explaining those gaps in cover letters, caring for an ill parent, pursuing additional certification, volunteering, anything but the truth that medical. Bills had drained her savings, that an eviction had damaged her rental history, that losing her teaching position during budget cuts had started a downward slide she couldn't stop. By noon, she was at Community Hope Kitchen, not for a meal, though she needed one, but to volunteer. She tied an apron around her waist and took her position serving lunch. "Unusual today, Miss Lila?" asked Marcus, a regular who'd been homeless since returning from military service with PTSD. "Extra mashed potatoes for my favorite veteran," she replied with a genuine smile, filling his plate generously. For 3 hours, Lila served, cleaned, and conversed with others struggling through hard times. She remembered names, stories, and specific needs, noting who needed extra socks, who was looking for work, who hadn't been seen lately and might need checking on. "And no, we could use someone like you on staff," the kitchen director said, "not for the first time. I can only pay minimum wage, but appreciate it, Diane, but I'm still hoping for a teaching position," Lila replied. "I can't give up on that dream yet." After her shift, Lila walked 8 blocks to the convenience store where she worked 4 evenings a week. The pay barely covered her storage unit and Charlie's food, but the night manager allowed her to store some personal items in the back room, a kindness she never took for granted. Between customers, she read borrowed books on childhood education, keeping her knowledge current. Sometimes she helped younger customers with homework questions, briefly becoming the teacher she still longed to be. At 11 p.m., she collected Charlie from the alley behind the store where he patiently waited each shift. Together, they walked through quieting streets toward their hidden sleeping spot, passing restaurants where diners lingered over expensive meals, and luxury apartments with doormen who eyed her suspiciously. Tonight, they took a detour through the park, where several dozen people had created a small community of tents and tarps. Lila distributed granola bars and clean socks she'd purchased with her employee discount. "And you should stay here with us, Lila," suggested an older woman named Grace. "And safer in numbers." Lila shook her head. "I appreciate it, but Charlie and I do better on our own. Besides, I'm saving for first month's rent on a place. Any day now." It wasn't entirely true. At her current income, an apartment remained a distant dream. But the hope, however fragile, kept her moving forward each day. As midnight approached, Lila settled into her sleeping spot. Charlie curled protectively beside her. She pulled out a water-damaged copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, a favorite from her teaching days, and read by the light of a small battery-powered lamp until her eyes grew heavy. "Tomorrow will be better," she whispered to Charlie, the same words she spoke every night. A mantra, a prayer, a desperate wish cast into an uncaring universe. The forecast had predicted moderate rainfall, but by 9 p.m., the skies unleashed a furious deluge that pounded the city streets. Ethan Vance stared out his office window at the sheets of rain, irritated by the meteorological inaccuracy that now threatened to delay his evening. The charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum was mandatory, not because Ethan cared about the arts education initiative being funded, but because 3 potential investors would be attending. His driver had texted that traffic was snarled due to flooding on major avenues. "And the car brought around," he instructed his assistant. "I'll take the wheel myself." 15 minutes later, Ethan guided his Aston Martin through rain-slicked streets, taking a shortcut through less familiar neighborhoods. His navigation system indicated he could save 12 minutes by cutting through the Eastern District, an area he normally wouldn't consider. The luxury vehicle handled beautifully until it didn't. 3 blocks into the detour, the engine sputtered, dashboard lights flashed, and the car rolled to a halt. "Impossible," Ethan muttered, trying the ignition again. Nothing. He called his service team, only to learn that due to widespread weather issues, assistance would be delayed on at least 90 minutes. Frustration mounting, Ethan stepped out into the downpour, immediately soaking his $5,000 suit. He popped the hood, though his knowledge of automotive mechanics was theoretical at best. Steam rose from the engine block, mixing with the falling rain. The street was nearly deserted, storefronts shuttered against the storm. A flickering streetlight revealed crumbling infrastructure and graffiti-covered walls, a stark contrast to the gleaming corridors of Ethan's usual environment. "And you don't want to leave that open in this rain." The voice startled him. A woman stood on the sidewalk, a plastic tarp held over her head, and a small dog huddled against her legs. "Excuse me?" Ethan's tone was defensive. "In the hood. Water's getting all over your engine. That won't help whatever's wrong." She approached cautiously, keeping distance that suggested both respect and wariness. Ethan assessed her quickly, worn clothing, practical backpack, intelligent eyes. Homeless, almost certainly, but not fitting the stereotype his privileged mind had constructed. "But do you know anything about cars?" he asked, desperation softening his usual guardedness. "And I worked at a garage during college," she replied, stepping closer to peer at the engine. "May I?" Ethan stepped aside, watching as her hands moved confidently among components he couldn't name. Rain plastered her dark hair against her neck, but she seemed unconcerned, focused entirely on the mechanical puzzle before her. "And her cooling system's overheated. There's a leak in the line here." She pointed to a section of the engine. Not something we can fix in the rain without parts. Cy and I have a service team coming, but they're delayed. They can't get here any faster in this weather, she said matter-of-factly. And there's flooding all over the east side. A particularly strong gust of wind drove the rain sideways, and the woman instinctively moved to shield her dog. The small gesture, putting another's comfort before her own, was so foreign to Ethan's world that it momentarily distracted him from his predicament. "Is there somewhere nearby where I could wait?" he asked, suddenly conscious of his vulnerability. She hesitated, weighing options. "There's a diner 2 blocks up that stays open late. They don't mind if people sit a while, as long as you order something. Would you show me?" The request felt awkward on his lips. When was the last time he'd asked for help rather than demanded service? "Sure." She closed the hood properly. "I'm Lila, by the way. This is Charlie." "Ethan," he replied, deliberately omitting his surname, which would likely trigger recognition. They walked in silence through the storm, the small dog trotting between them. Ethan noticed how Lila navigated the neighborhood with confidence, nodding to a man huddled in a doorway, avoiding a corner where shadowy figures exchanged something hand to hand. The diner's fluorescent lighting created a harsh contrast to the dark street. A bell jingled as they entered, and the warmth enveloped them immediately. Vinyl booths, chipped countertops, and the scent of coffee created an atmosphere entirely removed from Ethan's usual haunts. "Say, hey Lila," called the waitress, "and your usual spot's open." "Thanks, Dottie. My friend here had car trouble in the storm." Friend. The word hung in the air between them as they slid into a booth, Ethan stiff and uncomfortable in his soaked designer suit, Lila seemingly accustomed to wet clothing. "Coffee?" Dottie asked, eyeing Ethan with curiosity. "Please," he nodded. "And whatever she wants." "On just hot water for me," Lila said. "And maybe some scraps for Charlie?" "Coming right up, honey." When Dottie moved away, an awkward silence settled between them. Ethan glanced at his watch, a timepiece worth more than most people's cars. "And your service team won't be quick," Lila said, correctly reading his impatience. "Not in this weather. And I have an important engagement." "Don't we all?" There was no bitterness in her tone, just a gentle irony that made Ethan look at her, really look at her, for the first time. Despite her circumstances, Lila carried herself with quiet dignity. Her clothes were worn but clean, her manner confident without being confrontational. Most striking were her eyes, clear, intelligent, and completely unimpressed by him. "What's your important engagement?" she asked, warming her hands around the mug of hot water Dottie had delivered. Ethan hesitated. "And charity function. For arts education in underserved communities." "That's ironic," Lila said with a small smile. "Why?" "And because we're sitting in one of those underserved communities right now. The high school 3 blocks over had to cut their entire arts program last year." Her comment wasn't accusatory, but it hit Ethan with unexpected force. He'd written substantial checks to various causes, but had never actually seen the reality of what those checks were supposed to address. "And seemed to know a lot about the neighborhood," he observed. "And I should. It's my home." She said it simply, without self-pity. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. His service team had arrived at his car. Relief flooded through him, a return to control, to his world of predictability and power. "I need to go," he said, placing a $100 bill on the table. "For the coffee. And thank you for your help." Lila looked at the bill, but didn't touch it. "That's too much. Consider it compensation for your automotive expertise. I don't need charity," she said firmly. "And I helped you because that's what people should do for each other." The statement was so sincere, so fundamentally decent, that Ethan felt something shift inside him, a hairline crack in the protective wall he'd built around himself. "Then how about a job?" The words surprised him as much as they did her. "And I mean, my company is always looking for people with practical problem-solving skills." She studied him carefully. "And you don't even know my last name." "It's Monroe," the waitress interjected, setting down a small plate of bacon scraps for Charlie. "At Lila Monroe. Used to be a teacher before the school district cuts. Smartest customer I got." Lila blushed slightly. "Thank you, Dottie." "Monroe," Ethan repeated. "I'm Vance." Ethan Vance. He watched recognition flicker in her eyes, not excitement or awe, but wariness. "Vance Core Technologies," she said quietly. "In the AI company?" He nodded, suddenly eager to keep the conversation going. to understand how this woman who had so little could offer help so freely. But his phone buzzed again. His driver was waiting. "I should go," he said, standing. "But I meant what I said about the job. My company needs perspective from outside our bubble." He placed a business card beside the $100 bill. "My direct line, if you're interested." As he turned to leave, Lila's voice stopped him. "But Mr. Vance, your charity event, are you attending because you care about arts education or because it's good for business?" The question was gentle but direct, like a spotlight illuminating something he'd kept in shadow. "Both, I suppose," he answered honestly. "Does that make me a bad person?" "No," she replied, "and it makes you human. We all have mixed motives." As Ethan stepped back into the rain, now lightened to a gentle drizzle, he felt strangely reluctant to return to his world of luxury and isolation. For the first time in years, he'd had a conversation that wasn't transactional, with someone who wanted nothing from him but basic human decency. He looked back through the diner window. Lila was sharing the bacon scraps with Charlie, her face animated as she chatted with Dottie. There was something beautiful in her contentment despite having so little, something Ethan, with all his wealth, had never managed to achieve. The business card still lay on the table, untouched. He wondered if she would call. More surprisingly, he realized he hoped she would. 3 days after their rain-soaked encounter, Ethan found himself staring at his phone, wondering why Lila Monroe hadn't called. Executives and investors never kept him waiting. They returned his calls immediately, eager for his attention or approval. Yet this homeless woman with sharp insights and unwavering dignity hadn't reached out. "Mr. Vance, your 11 o'clock is waiting," his assistant announced, breaking his reverie. "Cancel it," he said abruptly, "and clear my afternoon." An hour later, his driver pulled up outside the diner where he'd sheltered with Lila. The place looked different in daylight, smaller, more worn, but somehow more authentic than the sterile restaurants he frequented. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Dottie said as the bell announced his arrival. "If it isn't Mr. Fancy Suit." Ethan smiled despite himself. "Is Lila around?" "Not her usual time." Dottie eyed him suspiciously. "Why are you looking for her?" "I offered her a job." "She never called." Dottie laughed. "And you're surprised? That girl's got pride thicker than our morning oatmeal. Besides, what would someone like her do at a place like yours?" The question wasn't hostile, but genuinely curious. Ethan realized he hadn't thought that far ahead. "Says she solves problems," he said simply. "And my company needs that." Dottie's expression softened. "See volunteers at Community Hope Kitchen on Tuesdays. 4 blocks east, can't miss it." The kitchen was housed in a converted warehouse, its faded brick exterior contrasting with the warmth emanating from within. Through the window, Ethan spotted Lila serving food, laughing with the people in line, genuinely connecting in a way that made his corporate networking skills seem hollow by comparison. He waited outside until her shift ended, feeling strangely nervous. When she emerged, Charlie trotting beside her, surprise registered on her face. "And Mr. Vance, you're a long way from your tower." In call," he said, immediately regretting how accusatory it sounded. "Should I have?" Her directness was refreshing. "And I meant what I said about the job." "Doing what exactly?" "I don't have tech skills. I don't even own a computer." "When you have perspective," Ethan replied. "And my company creates products for everyone but only listens to people like me. It's a blind spot, a dangerous one." Lila studied him carefully. "And what would this job entail?" "Consulting on our product development, telling us what we're missing, being the voice of people we never hear." "For how much?" $80,000 a year to start, plus benefits." Lila laughed. "That's absurd." "It's standard for an advisory position." "Oh no, what's absurd is plucking one random homeless person off the street and thinking that solves your diversity problem." Her tone wasn't angry, just matter of fact. "I won't be your token poor person, Mr. Vance." Ethan hadn't expected this reaction. People usually jumped at his offers. "That's not what I—" "Isn't it? You met me once, in a rainstorm. You know nothing about my skills or qualifications, yet you're offering me a salary that would change my life. Why?" The question hung between them. Why indeed? Was it guilt? Curiosity? Or something deeper? A recognition that his carefully constructed world lacked something essential that Lila possessed despite having nothing? "Because you asked me a question no one has asked me in years," he finally said. "And whether I attended charity events because I cared, or because it was good business." No one in my world would dare ask that. And that's worth $80,000? Honest perspective is priceless in my industry. He paused. But look, come to the office tomorrow, see what we do. If you still think it's absurd afterward, no hard feelings. Lila hesitated, then nodded slowly. What about Charlie? Bring him. We're technically pet-friendly, though no one actually does. But can't exactly show up in these clothes. Wear whatever you want. It's not about how you look. The next morning, Lila arrived at VanScore Tower in clean but simple clothing, jeans, a button-up shirt, and worn sneakers. Charlie walked beside her, his leash wrapped around her wrist. The security guard eyed them skeptically until Ethan appeared in the lobby. Ms. Monroe is my guest, he announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. She'll need full access credentials. In the elevator, Lila stood silently, taking in her reflection in the polished steel doors. And I don't belong here, she said quietly. Neither do most of the people who work for me, Ethan replied. But I just fake it better. The executive floor fell silent as Ethan led Lila through the open workspace. Employees stared, whispered, and quickly looked away when Ethan made eye contact. My team is developing a healthcare interface meant to improve access for underserved communities, Ethan explained in his office. And I'd like you to review it and tell me what we're missing. I'm not a healthcare expert, but you've navigated the system without resources. Your experience matters. Yet, for the next hour, Lila reviewed their prototype, asking questions that increasingly revealed the depth of her intelligence and insight. By lunch, she had identified 5 critical flaws in their design, assumptions about internet access, transportation, childcare, and language barriers that no one on his team had considered. But your system assumes everyone has a smartphone and reliable internet, she pointed out. And half the people at the shelter share one phone between them, and it's usually running out of minutes. As the day progressed, Ethan introduced her to various teams, watching with growing admiration as she gently but firmly challenged their assumptions. By late afternoon, 3 department heads had asked if she could consult on their projects. So, Ms. Monroe, Ethan said as they returned to his office, still think my offer is absurd? Lila smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Completely absurd. But maybe that's what your company needs. Does that mean you'll accept? And on 3 conditions. First, I want a proper contract with clear responsibilities. I won't be a charity case. Well done. Second, I need flexible hours so I can continue volunteering at the kitchen. Those people rely on me. Also fine. Third, she hesitated, I need a pet-friendly apartment near the office. I'm not commuting from a shelter, and Charlie stays with me. Ethan nodded. And I own a building 6 blocks from here. There's a vacant 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor. It's yours as part of your compensation package. Lila extended her hand. Then it seems we have a deal, Mr. Vance. As they shook hands, Ethan felt an unfamiliar sensation, not the satisfaction of closing a business deal, but something warmer, something that felt strangely like hope. Within 3 weeks, Lila Monroe became the most controversial employee at VanScore Technologies. Engineers bristled when she questioned their designs. Marketing executives frowned when she pointed out their campaigns spoke only to affluent consumers. Middle managers complained when she bypassed hierarchy to bring concerns directly to Ethan. Yet results were undeniable. The healthcare interface underwent a complete redesign based on her feedback, becoming more accessible to users across socioeconomic backgrounds. When beta testing began, user satisfaction scores were 42% higher than any previous product launch. And Ms. Monroe's insight about simplified language and visual guidance reduced our tutorial abandonment rate by over 60%, reported the user experience director during the quarterly review. And we've never seen engagement numbers this strong. Ethan watched from the back of the conference room as Lila presented her findings. She'd traded her worn clothing for simple professional attire, but her directness remained unchanged. The executive team shifted uncomfortably as she displayed charts highlighting usage disparities across income levels. Our products claim to serve everyone, but the data shows they primarily benefit those with resources and technical literacy, she explained. By focusing on inclusion, we expand our market and fulfill our stated mission of technological democratization. Her presentation concluded to reluctant applause. As executives filed out, Ethan overheard snippets of conversation. She makes valid points, but does she understand our profit margins? Where did Vance find her anyway? I heard she was homeless before this. Is that true? Ethan approached as the room emptied. And you've managed to terrify our entire executive team. Lila gathered her notes. Put good. Comfort breeds complacency. The board is questioning your role. They want metrics justifying your position. That one, show them the beta test results, she replied calmly. Numbers speak louder than prejudice. Over the following months, Lila's influence expanded beyond product development. She initiated a company-wide empathy training program, bringing in speakers from diverse backgrounds to share their experiences navigating technology barriers. She established an accessibility advisory panel composed of users from marginalized communities. Most controversially, she convinced Ethan to implement a public need metric alongside profit projections for all new projects. When your team is proposing a virtual reality platform that costs more than most families earn in a month, she argued during a product review meeting. Meanwhile, our basic accessibility tools remain underfunded. FinVR is where the market is heading, countered the chief innovation officer. And the profit potential. Profit without purpose is just hoarding, Lila interrupted. All eyes turned to Ethan, expecting him to side with the innovation team. Develop both, he decided. Same resources, same priority. Let's see which creates more value, not just financially, but in terms of reach and impact. The innovation officer left fuming, but others noticed the shift in Ethan's decision-making process. The CEO, who once evaluated projects solely on market potential, now asked different questions. Who does this serve? Who gets left behind? How does this improve lives, not just quarterly returns? One Tuesday afternoon, Ethan surprised his executive team by canceling their weekly strategy session. Where are you going? His COO asked as Ethan headed for the elevator. Community outreach, he replied vaguely. 2 hours later, he stood beside Lila at Community Hope Kitchen, wearing jeans and a plain button-down shirt, serving meals to the homeless community she knew by name. Marcus, meet my boss, Lila said to the veteran who'd become a regular. He wanted to see what real community looks like. Fancy man serving soup, Marcus chuckled. Now I've seen everything. Initially awkward and out of place, Ethan gradually relaxed as Lila guided him. He listened as people shared stories of job searches hampered by lack of internet access, of medical appointments missed due to confusing digital systems, of children struggling with online homework in homes without computers. When technology leaves us behind, an elderly woman told him plainly. My grandson is brilliant, but how can he compete when his school has one computer for 30 kids? By the end of the shift, Ethan's expensive watch and designer jeans were splashed with soup, but his mind was racing with ideas. The next morning, he called an emergency meeting with his education technology division. When we're launching a new initiative, he announced. For every premium device we sell, we donate one to under-resourced schools. And I want a team developing an affordable, durable tablet specifically designed for educational access. And it will impact our profit margins, the CFO warned. It will expand our market and fulfill our mission, Ethan replied, echoing Lila's words. Prepare implementation plans by next week. When the education division unveiled their Equal Access tablet 3 months later, the prototype reflected everything Lila had advocated. Ruggedized design, simplified interface, offline functionality, and a price point accessible to schools with limited funding. Early adoption exceeded projections, and educational outcomes in pilot schools showed marked improvement. And you've created something genuinely good, Lila told Ethan after reviewing the project reports. And we've created it, he corrected. TIS wouldn't exist without your perspective. For the first time since joining the company, Lila allowed herself a moment of pride. Her journey from teacher to homeless advocate to corporate advisor had come full circle. She was teaching again, teaching one of the world's most powerful companies how to see beyond profit margins to human potential. More significantly, she was witnessing Ethan's transformation. The CEO, who once viewed the world through algorithmic efficiency, now sought to understand human experiences. His questions became less about market dominance and more about meaningful impact. His decisions, while still financially sound, now incorporated considerations his board members found baffling, but increasingly difficult to dismiss given the positive results. 1 year changing, she observed one evening as they reviewed plans for a community technology center in her old neighborhood. Is that a good thing? He asked. And depends on why you're changing. Is it because it's good business, or because you actually care? Ethan considered the question, the same one she'd asked that rainy night in the diner. Both, he finally said. But the balance is shifting. The shift extended beyond company initiatives. Without formal planning or acknowledgement, Ethan and Lila began spending time together outside work hours. It started with late evenings reviewing projects, ordering takeout as they debated implementation strategies. Then came weekend visits to community centers where they gathered feedback on prototype designs. One Sunday morning, Lila found Ethan waiting outside her apartment building with Charlie's leash in hand. "I thought I'd talk him today," Ethan explained. "As if that's okay." Their walks became a weekend ritual. They explored parts of the city Ethan had never noticed despite living there for decades. Community gardens tucked between buildings, street art that told neighborhood stories, family-owned businesses that had served generations. "And I've lived here 15 years but never really seen it," Ethan admitted as they shared coffee on a park bench. "And I moved through the city rather than existing in it." "Most people with resources do," Lila replied without judgment. "Why engage with problems you can afford to avoid?" "Is that what I was doing? Avoiding problems?" "Not just problems. Life itself. Real, messy, imperfect life." During these conversations, their professional roles gradually dissolved. Ethan shared stories of his childhood, the pressure of exceptional intelligence, the emotional distance of academic parents, the loneliness of being perpetually ahead of his peers. Lila described her journey, her passion for teaching, the joy of connecting with struggling students, the crushing blow of losing everything when budget cuts eliminated her position. "I never expected to become homeless," she confessed. "I had savings, family I could call, but my mother's cancer treatments depleted everything. Then the eviction, then the gap in employment that made finding work nearly impossible. Each step seemed temporary, until suddenly it wasn't." "Yet you never lost your compassion," Ethan observed. "But most people would have become bitter." "Bitterness is a luxury I couldn't afford. It takes too much energy." On a crisp autumn evening, they sat on a rooftop garden Ethan had created atop his building, a space designed with Lila's input, featuring native plants and a vegetable garden that supplied the community kitchen. The city lights sparkled below as they shared a simple dinner. "Why did you really offer me this job?" Lila asked, the question that had lingered between them for months. Ethan considered his answer carefully. "Because you saw me, not my wealth or my company or my reputation, just me. No one had done that in years." The admission hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest. When his hand brushed against hers, neither pulled away. The contact was brief but electric, acknowledging something neither was ready to name. Their dynamic at work remained professional but warmed with mutual respect and growing affection. Employees noted how Ethan softened in Lila's presence, how his notorious impatience gave way to thoughtful listening, how his criticism became constructive rather than cutting. They noticed, too, how Lila blossomed with confidence, her innovative ideas flowing more freely as she recognized her value beyond her challenging past. "And you've changed the entire company culture," remarked Maya, a junior designer who had become Lila's friend. "People actually speak up in meetings now instead of just agreeing with whatever Ethan says." "He was always capable of listening," Lila defended, "but just needed someone worth listening to." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a compliment from you." "It's not a compliment, it's an observation." But it was more than observation. Somewhere between professional respect and personal connection, something deeper had developed, something neither had anticipated when Ethan's car broke down in the rain. The business press noticed the changes at VanceCore long before they detected the personal relationship developing between the CEO and his unlikely advisor. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature titled, "In VanceCore's Humanitarian Pivot, Genuine Evolution or Strategic Branding." Technology blogs analyzed the company's new accessibility initiatives, praising the innovation while questioning the profit strategy. Then came the photograph. A freelance photographer captured Ethan and Lila walking Charlie through a farmer's market, their hands briefly intertwined, his head bent toward hers in laughter. The image appeared first on social media, then spread to technology sites, and finally made its way to mainstream business publications. Tech Billionaire's mysterious new companion, "Who I as the woman transforming VanceCore?" blared the headline on Businessweek's website. Within hours, reporters had uncovered Lila's background, her teaching career, her period of homelessness, her sudden elevation to advisor at one of the world's most innovative companies. The narrative split between heartwarming success story and scandalous speculation. "And Mr. Vance, the board requests your presence regarding the recent publicity," his assistant informed him tensely one morning. The boardroom atmosphere was glacial when Ethan arrived. Gerald Hoffman, the lead director, slid a tablet across the table displaying the market report. "And so our stock dropped 3 points since these stories broke," Hoffman stated flatly. Investors are concerned about Ms. Monroe's influence on company direction, and her quarterly results are the strongest in company history, Ethan countered. Anti-education division's growth alone. Consistent about results, interrupted Sheila Winters, another board member. It's about perception. Your relationship with a former homeless woman raises questions about judgment. Ethan felt cold anger rising. My judgment? The former homeless woman you're referring to has revolutionized our product development process and opened markets we previously ignored. When we're not disputing her contributions, Hoffman said carefully. And your personal involvement creates complications. The board suggests reassigning Ms. Monroe to a less visible role and issuing a statement clarifying that your relationship is purely professional. And if it isn't purely professional? Ethan challenged. A tense silence fell over the room. Hoffman cleared his throat. Then we would have serious concerns about conflicts of interest and the company's public image. Ethan stood, straightening his jacket. And the company I built has doubled its user base while becoming more socially responsible. If the board is more concerned with my personal life than those results, perhaps you should reconsider your priorities. As he walked out, leaving the board in stunned silence, Ethan realized something had fundamentally changed. For the first time in his career, he valued something more than the company's success or his reputation within it. That evening, he found Lila in the community garden, harvesting vegetables for the kitchen. Without preamble, he told her about the board meeting. They'll pressure you to leave, she said, her hands still working methodically among the plants. When you should let me resign. The company is more important than— No, Ethan interrupted. You're more important. The simplicity of his statement hung in the evening air. Lila's hands stilled as she looked up at him, searching his face for doubt or hesitation. Finding none, she slowly stood and closed the distance between them. Are you sure? She asked quietly. His answer wasn't in words, but in the gentle touch of his hand against her cheek, in the way he drew her closer, in the kiss that finally acknowledged what had been growing between them for months. As the sun set over the city they both called home, one from a penthouse view and one from street level, they recognized that their unlikely connection had become something neither could have calculated or predicted, a partnership that transcended professional collaboration and challenged both their definitions of value, worth, and possibility. Comment below with a time when someone completely different from you changed your perspective on life. Did you meet them by chance, or were you brought together for a purpose? Share your story of unexpected connection and how it transformed your thinking. Bantscore's flagship project, 3 years in development with over $2 billion invested, was called Nexus. This revolutionary neural interface promised to transform how humans interact with technology, allowing users to control devices through thought alone. Medical applications looked especially promising, paralyzed patients controlling prosthetics, ALS sufferers communicating effortlessly, and enhanced rehabilitation for stroke victims. The morning of the public launch, Ethan stood backstage at the Metropolitan Convention Center, reviewing his presentation one final time. 2,000 journalists, investors, and technology leaders filled the auditorium. Billions more would watch the live stream. Nervous? Lila asked, straightening his tie. Bantscore has never failed at a major launch, he replied. Why start now? She smiled. Confidence becomes you. The presentation began flawlessly. Ethan moved across the stage with practiced ease, explaining how Nexus would democratize technology access for disabled users worldwide. Video testimonials from beta testers brought tears to the audience's eyes. A young girl with cerebral palsy painting digitally using only her thoughts, a quadriplegic veteran navigating his smart home independently. Today, we bridge the gap between human limitation and technological possibility, Ethan concluded. Nexus isn't just an interface, it's freedom for millions previously excluded from the digital revolution. The demonstration began with 10 volunteers wearing sleek headsets. On massive screens above the stage, the audience watched as users silently commanded their devices, sending messages, creating art, even playing simple games, all through neural commands. 8 minutes into the demonstration, a volunteer frowned, removing his headset. Something's wrong, he said. It's giving me a headache. Before technicians could respond, 3 more volunteers reported similar issues. One woman winced in pain, tearing off her headset. It's like electrical pulses, she gasped. Is it getting stronger? Ethan maintained his composure, suggesting a minor calibration issue, as he directed the technical team to intervene. But backstage, panic erupted. Chief engineers huddled around monitors, frantically analyzing data streams. And a feedback loop is amplifying, the lead developer explained hurriedly. And the signal is bouncing back to the users instead of to the devices. Can you fix it? Ethan demanded. Not immediately. It's a hardware issue, not just software. On stage, the demonstration had completely collapsed. All volunteers had removed their headsets, some reporting severe headaches, and one experiencing a seizure-like episode that required medical attention. Ethan returned to the podium, his expression grave. When we're experiencing technical difficulties that require further investigation, in abundance of caution, we're concluding today's demonstration. The safety of our users remains our highest priority. The damage control began immediately. VanScore's PR team issued statements emphasizing that Nexus remained in beta and that user safety protocols had worked as designed by identifying the issue before full release. But the narrative had already escaped their control. Medical experts questioned whether proper safety testing had occurred. Technology journalists speculated about fundamental flaws in the neural interface design. Within hours, #NexusFail trended worldwide, accompanied by video clips of the volunteer receiving medical attention. By evening, VanScore's stock had plummeted 28%. Emergency board meetings convened while engineers worked through the night, analyzing what had gone wrong. Ethan moved between crisis teams, his confident demeanor replaced by grim determination. Lila found him at 3 a.m. in his office, surrounded by technical reports and medical assessments. Initial brain scans show no lasting damage to the volunteers, she reported, setting coffee beside him. And the medical community is demanding complete transparency about the technology. And they should. Ethan rubbed his eyes. But we failed them. Stopped the demonstration before anyone suffered permanent harm. That counts for something. The following days brought cascading consequences. The FDA announced an investigation into VanScore's testing protocols. Class action lawsuits emerged from shareholders claiming the company had misrepresented Nexus's readiness for market. Most damaging was the leaked internal email from a junior engineer who had flagged potential feedback issues months earlier, only to have his concerns dismissed by senior management pressured to meet launch deadlines. A week after the failed demonstration, the board called an emergency session. Ethan arrived to find not just directors, but major investors present, faces tense with concern and anger. When the situation is untenable, announced Gerald Hoffman. Nexus represented 40% of our development resources. Preliminary engineering reports suggest a minimum 6-month delay for redesign, possibly longer. We can weather this, Ethan insisted. I know our education division is showing strong growth, and education products don't drive our valuation, interrupted Sheila Winters. And the market expected Nexus to revolutionize medical technology. That promise is now in question. Arnold Chen, representing the company's largest institutional investor, cleared his throat. Then the board has asked me to express our concerns about leadership decisions leading to this failure. We believe VanScore requires more cautious guidance during this crisis. The implication was clear. Ethan's position was under threat. You're suggesting I step down? He asked directly. Temporarily, Hoffman clarified. A leave of absence, while an interim CEO guides the company through this crisis. Your recent personal distractions may have contributed to oversight failures. The reference to Lila hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. This isn't about my personal life, Ethan responded coldly. It's about a technical failure that occurred despite rigorous testing. Every innovation carries risk. Risk is acceptable. Negligence is not, replied Chen, and the leaked emails suggest warnings were ignored. For 3 hours, the debate continued. Ethan defended his leadership while acknowledging the severity of the failure. He presented preliminary recovery plans, emphasizing transparency with regulators and accelerated development of alternative products. By meeting's end, he had secured a 2-week grace period to present a comprehensive recovery strategy before the board voted on his temporary removal. Returning to his office, Ethan found his executive team waiting anxiously. Their questions came rapidly about board reactions, investor confidence, and regulatory response. He answered with calm authority he didn't entirely feel. When they finally dispersed, Lila remained, studying his face. When they want you out. Temporarily, he corrected, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Because of me. Because the press connects your relationship with a former homeless woman to poor judgment. No. Ethan crossed the room, taking her hands. And because a $2 billion project failed spectacularly on international television, because our stock lost a third of its value in a week, because someone needs to take responsibility, and that someone is you, after everything you've built? He sighed, the weight of the situation visible in his posture. And maybe they're right. I was so focused on pushing boundaries that I missed warning signs. People could have been seriously hurt. Then fix it, Lila said simply, not by stepping aside, but by showing them what thoughtful leadership looks like during crisis. How? The question contained a vulnerability he rarely showed others. By remembering what I've been trying to teach you since day one, technology isn't just about innovation, it's about people. That night, neither went home. While engineering teams dissected Nexus's technical failure, Ethan and Lila retreated to a conference room with a different mission. They ordered takeout, cleared whiteboards, and began reimagining not just the company's response to crisis, but its fundamental approach to technology development. By morning, exhaustion shadowed their eyes, but purpose had replaced despair. Ethan called an all-hands meeting, standing before his anxious employees not as the infallible visionary, but as a leader confronting failure honestly. Yesterday, our most ambitious project collapsed very publicly, he began. Today, we start rebuilding not just Nexus, but our entire approach to innovation. The fundamental flaw wasn't in our algorithms or hardware, Lila explained to VanceCore's assembled department heads the following afternoon. It was in our development process. On the screen behind her, she displayed a diagram contrasting traditional product development with a new model she'd created overnight, one that placed human concerns at each stage rather than merely at the testing phase. When Bill built Nexus to push technological boundaries, then retrofitted safety as an afterthought, she continued. We treated human needs as secondary to innovation, not as its primary purpose. The engineering director bristled when we conducted extensive safety testing. And on the technology you created, Lila interjected. But you never questioned whether the technology itself should be created in that form. The neural pathways you targeted are the same ones involved in pain perception. Any neuroscientist could have flagged this risk at the conceptual stage, but we never invited them to the table. Her criticism was direct, but delivered without accusation. This wasn't about assigning blame, but identifying systemic failures. Inez Monroe is right, Ethan added, standing beside her. Our development teams operate in isolation, evaluated on technical achievements rather than human outcomes. That changes today. He unveiled their proposal, a complete restructuring of VanceCore's product development process. Cross-functional teams would include not just engineers and designers, but medical professionals, ethicists, accessibility experts, and representatives from diverse user communities. Every project would undergo ethical review at conception, not merely before launch. Most radically, they proposed temporarily shelving Nexus to focus on a different approach to neural interface technology, one emphasizing medical rehabilitation rather than consumer applications. But the market expects Nexus, objected the marketing director. And pivoting now would confirm we've abandoned our flagship product. And the market also expects products that don't harm users, Lila countered. We've identified a fundamental safety issue with direct neural interfaces. Pretending we can quickly fix that would be dishonest and dangerous. For nearly 4 hours, debate raged. Department heads raised concerns about development timelines, resource allocation, and market perception. Lila answered each objection with remarkable patience, drawing on her teaching background to help highly technical specialists understand the human implications of their work. The turning point came when Dr. Sanjay Mehta, a neurologist who had consulted on Nexus, spoke up. Ms. Monroe's analysis is correct. The interface design created potential for signal amplification in pain receptors, a risk that should have been identified in conceptual development. Her proposed alternative targeting motor pathways instead of sensory ones is actually more promising for rehabilitation applications. Gradually, resistance gave way to tentative acceptance. By meeting's end, a new course had been charted. VanceCore would publicly announce a strategic shift toward medical rehabilitation technology, transparently acknowledging Nexus's safety concerns while unveiling a more focused approach already in development. The board proved harder to convince. When Ethan and Lila presented their plan 2 days later, skepticism dominated the response. You're suggesting we abandon a $2 billion investment, summarized Gerald Hoffman, disbelief evident in his tone. We're suggesting we evolve it, Ethan corrected. And the core technology remains valuable, but its application needs recalibration. Meanwhile, we accelerate other divisions to maintain market position. Based on Ms. Monroe's recommendation, Sheila Winters observed dryly, and a former educator with no technical background. And based on a human-centered approach that our technical experts have now validated, Ethan replied firmly. The Dr. Mehta's team confirms that our new direction actually offers more immediate medical benefits with significantly reduced risk. The debate continued for hours, becoming increasingly heated as financial projections were challenged and development timelines questioned. Throughout, Lila remained calm, addressing technical questions by deferring to appropriate experts while focusing the conversation repeatedly on fundamental principles. VanScore's mission statement commits to technology that enhances human potential, she reminded them. Enhancement requires safety. This isn't just crisis management, it's realignment with our core values. As the meeting concluded, the board reluctantly approved a 2-month trial of the new approach before making final decisions about leadership changes. It wasn't a complete victory, but it provided crucial breathing room. The public announcement came the following week. Rather than a typical corporate press release, Ethan hosted a live-streamed conversation with medical professionals, ethics experts, and 2 of the volunteers affected by the Nexus demonstration. He acknowledged the failure candidly, explained the technical issues identified, and outlined the company's commitment to a more responsible development process. Most powerfully, he introduced the first patients already benefiting from the redirected technology, stroke survivors using a simplified motor pathway interface to regain movement control. Their progress, while less flashy than controlling computers with thoughts, demonstrated immediate, tangible human benefit. Market response was cautiously positive. While VanScore stock didn't recover its losses, the decline halted. Technology media praised the transparency of the approach, with TechCrunch writing, and VanScore's response represents a potential turning point in how tech companies handle failure, with honesty rather than denial. Medical partnerships that had cooled after the Nexus incident rekindled interest in the rehabilitation focus. 3 major university research hospitals requested collaboration opportunities within days of the announcement. Inside VanScore, the transformation proved even more profound. Development teams reorganized around Lila's human-centered model. Engineers who initially resisted found renewed purpose in seeing direct applications of their work in rehabilitation settings. The competitive internal culture gradually shifted toward collaborative problem-solving. 6 weeks after the failed demonstration, early results from the rehabilitation technology exceeded projections. Patients with partial paralysis showed measurable improvement in fine motor control. Medical journals requested research papers. Regulatory authorities expressed support for the adjusted focus. At the follow-up board meeting, opposition had softened considerably. Even Gerald Hoffman acknowledged the promising direction, though he remained concerned about long-term revenue projections. The publicity crisis appears contained, he conceded. But can this rehabilitation focus replace Nexus's projected market potential? Perhaps not immediately, Ethan admitted. And it builds something more valuable: trust. We're establishing VanScore as a company that prioritizes human well-being over technological spectacle. By meeting's end, the board voted unanimously to maintain current leadership and fully endorse the strategic shift. As directors filed out, Arnold Chen, the investor who had most strongly advocated for Ethan's removal, paused beside Lila. "Impressive recovery strategy, Ms. Monroe," he said quietly. "Sonny underestimated your contributions to this company." When only Ethan and Lila remained in the boardroom, the professional facade finally dropped. Ethan collapsed into a chair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "When we did it," he said, disbelief coloring his voice. "When you did it," Lila corrected, "and you had the courage to admit failure and choose a better path." He looked up at her, admiration clear in his eyes. "When we chose it together." The crisis that nearly destroyed VanScore ironically strengthened the bond between Ethan and Lila. Working side by side through endless strategy sessions, facing hostile questions from board members, supporting each other when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them, each challenge forged deeper connection. 3 weeks after the board's vote of confidence, they finally allowed themselves a night away from crisis management. Ethan prepared dinner in Lila's apartment, a simple pasta dish that represented the limits of his culinary skills. Charlie watched hopefully from his bed in the corner as they ate by candlelight. "Son realized something today," Ethan said, refilling her glass. "I haven't thanked you properly." "For what?" "For saving my company, for teaching me what really matters, for seeing value in me beyond what I'd built." Lila's expression softened. "I don't need to thank me for that." "I do," he insisted. Before I met you, I measured everything by metrics: market share, quarterly growth, user acquisition. I never considered the human impact of my work. And now? And now I understand that innovation without compassion is just complication. Technology without humanity is just machinery. Later, as they stood washing dishes together, a domestic simplicity Ethan had never experienced, he asked a question that had lingered between them. Why did you help me? That night in the rain, you could have walked past like everyone else. Lila considered the question. Because helping others is how I remained human when circumstances tried to reduce me to a statistic. Each act of kindness was an affirmation that I still mattered, that I still had value beyond my circumstances. Her words struck him profoundly. This woman who had lost everything had somehow retained what he, with all his wealth, had never possessed: a fundamental understanding of human worth beyond achievement or status. When he kissed her, it held none of the hesitation of their previous encounters. This wasn't just attraction or gratitude, but recognition, of finding in another person the missing pieces of oneself. They moved to the small couch, conversation giving way to touch, to whispered affirmations, to the gradual discovery of each other. There was tenderness in their intimacy, a careful attention to each other's responses that reflected their growing emotional connection. Afterward, lying together in the quiet darkness of her bedroom, Ethan traced patterns on her shoulder. And I never expected this, he confessed. What? Being with someone who owned exactly 3 sets of sheets? He laughed. Being with someone who fundamentally changed how I see the world. Lila rose on one elbow, studying his face in the dim light. Is that what I've done? You've shown me that genuine connection matters more than achievement, that compassion isn't weakness but strength, that the measure of success isn't what you accumulate but what you contribute. But pretty profound lessons from a homeless woman you met in a rainstorm. And most important lessons often come from unexpected teachers. As weeks passed, their relationship deepened through shared experiences rather than extravagant gestures. Ethan discovered joy in simple pleasures, walking Charlie through morning quiet parks, preparing meals together, falling asleep to the rhythm of Lila's breathing. She reintroduced him to the city he'd viewed only from penthouses and limousines, showing him neighborhood festivals, community gardens, and corner bookstores where owners knew customers by name. At VanceCore, they maintained professional boundaries, but everyone recognized the fundamental change in their CEO. The driven perfectionist had become a more balanced leader, still demanding excellence, but now equally concerned with employee well-being and ethical considerations. Their different perspectives created occasional tension, but also remarkable synergy. When they disagreed, their debates produced stronger solutions than either would have developed alone. Ethan's strategic vision combined with Lila's human insight generated innovations that were both technologically advanced and deeply empathetic. 2 months into their relationship, Lila arranged a surprise reunion with Ethan's estranged family, parents whose academic focus had left little room for emotional connection, a sister whose resentment of his success had created distance. The awkward dinner gradually warmed as Lila gently facilitated conversation, helping family members express long-buried feelings and find common ground. How did you know that was what I needed? Ethan asked afterward. Because everyone needs belonging, she replied simply. Even billionaires who pretend to be self-sufficient. 3 months into their relationship, they no longer maintained separate residences. Though Ethan's penthouse offered luxury Lila had never experienced, they spent most nights in her modest apartment, creating a home that reflected both. Their worlds, his sophisticated art alongside photographs of her former students, his high-tech entertainment system beside her collection of well-worn books. Their lives had merged with surprising ease, each filling gaps in the other's existence that neither had fully recognized before. For Ethan, Lila provided emotional grounding and human perspective. For Lila, he offered stability and opportunity to reclaim dreams that hardship had deferred but never extinguished. The first sign appeared so subtly that Lila initially dismissed it. Unusual fatigue she attributed to long hours at VanceCore. Mild nausea she blamed on stress from the continuing company transition. When she fainted briefly during a product review meeting, however, denial became impossible. "We need to see a doctor," Ethan insisted, helping her to his office couch. "This isn't just exhaustion." The following morning, Lila sat nervously in a medical clinic Ethan had arranged, one that promised both excellence and discretion. Blood tests, examination, questions about her medical history and recent symptoms. When the doctor returned with results, her expression contained poorly concealed surprise. "Ms. Monroe, you're pregnant." The words hung in the air, simultaneously obvious and impossible. Lila processed the news with stunned silence while Ethan's hand tightened around hers. "Are you certain?" he finally asked. "And the blood test is definitive," the doctor confirmed. "Been based on hormone levels approximately 7 weeks along. We should schedule an ultrasound to confirm development and exact dating." 7 weeks. Lila calculated backward to the night after the board had voted confidence in their recovery plan, when months of tension had finally released in celebration and connection. The ultrasound was scheduled for the following day. Ethan canceled board meetings to attend, his usual composure replaced by nervous energy as they waited in the examination room. When the technician applied the gel and pressed the transducer against Lila's still flat abdomen, both held their breath. The technician's expression changed almost immediately, puzzlement replacing routine professionalism. She adjusted the device, moving it carefully across Lila's stomach while studying the screen with increasing concentration. "Is something wrong?" Lila asked, anxiety rising. "Not wrong," the technician replied carefully. "It's just unexpected. Let me get the doctor." The minutes until the doctor's arrival stretched interminably. When she entered, her review of the screen was methodical and focused. "Miss Monroe, Mr. Vance," she began, choosing her words deliberately. "What we're seeing here is quite remarkable. You're carrying multiple fetuses." "Twins?" Ethan asked, his voice strained. "No." The doctor turned the screen toward them, pointing to distinct forms. 1, 2, 3, 4 separate embryonic sacs. You're carrying quadruplets." The revelation struck with physical force. Lila felt the room tilt slightly, Ethan's hand anchoring her to reality as the doctor continued explaining. "Spontaneous quadruplets are extremely rare, approximately 1 in 700,000 pregnancies. In your case, there appears to be 1 set of identical twins and 2 fraternal siblings, suggesting the release and fertilization of 3 eggs with 1 dividing further." 4 babies, Lila whispered, the words barely audible. "And at once. Cis pregnancy will be considered very high risk," the doctor continued. "Multiple gestations carry increased chances of complications, including premature birth, growth restriction, and maternal health challenges. You'll need specialized care, frequent monitoring, and significant lifestyle adjustments." Ethan's questions came rapidly about medical risks, appropriate specialists, necessary precautions. But Lila remained silent, her mind struggling to reconcile this biological miracle with the practical reality it would create. Just months ago she had been homeless, her teaching career a distant memory, her future uncertain. Now she carried 4 lives inside her, 4 children who would be born into extraordinary circumstances. "I'll give you some time alone," the doctor said gently, recognizing the couple's need to process the news privately. When the door closed, silence enveloped them. Ethan knelt beside the examination table, his expression a complex mixture of concern, wonder, and fear. "Lila," he began, then stopped, searching for adequate words. "4 babies," she repeated, tears forming. "But Ethan, I was living under a bridge 8 months ago. How can I possibly be a mother to 4 children? So we'll face this together," he promised, though his own voice wavered with uncertainty. "Whatever you decide, whatever you need." "What I decide?" The question held genuine confusion. "This is your body, your choice. I'll support whatever path you feel is right." His words touched her deeply, this acknowledgement of her autonomy, this absence of assumption despite his resources and influence. It was this respect, more than any declaration of love, that clarified her own feelings. "And I want these children," she said, the decision crystallizing as she spoke it. "I'm terrified and completely unprepared, but I want them." Relief washed over Ethan's face. "Then we'll prepare together. We have resources, we have time." But what about us?" Lila interrupted, voicing the question that hovered beneath the medical revelations. "We've known each other less than a year. We come from completely different worlds. Now we're facing something that would challenge even the most established couples." Ethan considered her words carefully. "Perhaps that's our strength, not our weakness. Different perspectives creating balance. You've already taught me more about humanity than I learned in 37 years. Maybe these children need both our worlds." The enormity of their situation gradually settled over them as they left the clinic. 4 children would require space, resources, planning, practical considerations that provided temporary distraction from the emotional magnitude. Ethan immediately began researching maternal fetal medicine specialists, while Lila mentally inventoried her limited possessions, considering what a home for 5 would require. That evening, they sat in Lila's small living room, Charlie curled between them as they attempted to process the day's revelation. "And I always wanted children," Lila admitted. "When I was teaching, I imagined having 2, maybe 3 eventually, but 4 at once." "Are you having doubts?" Ethan asked gently. "Not about wanting them, about deserving them." She stroked Charlie absently. "When I became homeless, I lost faith in my ability to care for anyone but myself. Now I'm responsible for 4 lives before they even begin." "When you never stopped caring for others," Ethan reminded her. "Sin, you volunteered at the kitchen when you barely had enough for yourself. You advocated for people society had forgotten. That compassion is exactly what children need." "And you?" she asked. 10 months ago, your life was algorithms and acquisitions. Now it's morning sickness and prenatal vitamins. Are you ready for 4 babies crying simultaneously at 3 a.m.? "Honestly, I'm terrified," he admitted, but also strangely hopeful. These children will be born to parents from opposite ends of society. They'll understand both privilege and perseverance. They'll see value beyond wealth and strength beyond success. His words encompassed something larger than their immediate circumstances, a vision of family that transcended conventional boundaries, that embodied the very integration of perspectives they had brought to Vanscore. As night settled around them, practical questions gave way to deeper reflections. How would they explain to these children their unusual beginning? How would society, and especially the ruthless business world, respond to this dramatic development? How would parenthood change their still evolving relationship? "There's something else we need to discuss," Ethan said finally. "And the press will discover this eventually. When they do, our story will become public property, dissected, judged, sensationalized." Lila nodded, having already considered this reality. "And a billionaire and the homeless woman expecting quadruplets. It's practically designed for headlines. And we could manage it proactively. Control the narrative before speculation takes over. Or we could focus on what matters, preparing for these children, and let people think what they will." Their discussion continued late into the night, weighing options, confronting fears, and gradually building a framework for moving forward. No decisions were final, no plans complete, but direction emerged from chaos as they faced this extraordinary challenge together. When exhaustion finally overtook conversation, they lay in bed, Ethan's hand resting protectively over Lila's stomach. 4 heartbeats, he whispered with wonder. 4 possibilities we never imagined. 4 lives connecting worlds that should have remained separate, Lila added softly. "If my car hadn't broken down that night, if you hadn't offered help to a stranger." The improbability of their journey, from chance encounter to impending parenthood, struck them both anew. Whatever challenges awaited, whatever judgments would come, this much was certain: their story had already defied every expectation and probability. 4 new heartbeats represented not just biological miracle, but testimony to connection that transcended social boundaries. Tomorrow would bring doctor's appointments, living arrangements, and inevitable public scrutiny. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, existed only wonder and the profound recognition that life's most transformative journeys rarely follow planned routes. Tech billionaire expecting quadruplets with former homeless employee. The headline exploded across social media on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Lila and Ethan had learned about the pregnancy. Someone at the medical clinic had leaked the information, a betrayal that sent both their personal and professional lives into chaos. By noon, reporters camped outside Vanscore headquarters in Lila's apartment building. Financial news networks dissected potential implications for the company's stability. Tabloids published unflattering photos of Lila from her time on the streets alongside glamour shots of Ethan at industry galas, the visual contrast deliberately highlighting their different backgrounds. NM's Monroe has refused all interview requests, Ethan's head of communications reported during the emergency executive meeting. "Mr. Vance, we need a statement immediately. Investment analysts are questioning your judgment and focus." Gerald Hoffman called from New York, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "And the board convenes in 48 hours. This development, coming so soon after the Nexus failure, raises serious governance concerns." Lila sat quietly at the conference table, acutely aware of the sidelong glances from executives who had previously accepted her. Now their expressions contained mixture of curiosity, judgment, and calculation. How would this pregnancy affect their positions? Their stock options? Their professional reputations? "Then my personal life doesn't impact my leadership capabilities," Ethan responded calmly. "Then the company recovery strategy remains on track." Or personal life involves quadruplets with an employee hired under questionable circumstances, Hoffman countered. And the optics are devastating. After the call disconnected, Ethan turned to his executive team. "And I need the room with Ms. Monroe." When they were alone, his composure briefly cracked. "I'm sorry," he said, taking her hands. "I deserve privacy, not this circus." "We knew this would happen eventually," Lila replied. "Though I'd hoped for more time to prepare. And the board is looking for ways to remove me. They'll use our relationship and the pregnancy as evidence of compromised judgment." "And maybe you should distance yourself," Lila suggested reluctantly. "Professionally, at least. I could take a leave." "Absolutely not," Ethan interrupted. "But I won't validate their prejudice. You've been instrumental in saving this company. Our personal relationship doesn't change that." Outside the executive suite, VanceCore employees processed the news with mixed reactions. Some expressed genuine happiness for the couple whose unlikely connection had humanized their workplace. Others voiced concerns about preferential treatment and conflicts of interest. A small but vocal group questioned whether a former homeless woman belonged in their corporate environment at all, suggesting Lila had manipulated her way into both Ethan's company and his personal life. These murmurs reached Lila through Maya, her closest colleague. "They're saying terrible things," Maya reported hesitantly. "And that you planned this pregnancy to secure your position, that you're using your background for sympathy and advancement." "People love simple narratives," Lila responded with remarkable calm. "A gold digger and the gullible billionaire is easier to understand than two people connecting despite their differences." The media constructed their own narratives, each version crafted to generate maximum engagement. Business publications questioned Ethan's capacity to manage both a corporate crisis and an exceptionally complex pregnancy. Women's magazines celebrated the modern fairy tale of the homeless woman and the billionaire. Conservative commentators decried the moral decline represented by their unmarried status and unconventional relationship. Most painful were the investigative pieces digging into Lila's past, interviewing former colleagues from her teaching days, neighbors who had witnessed her eviction, and even other homeless individuals who had known her on the streets. Her life's most difficult chapters were dissected for public consumption, her struggles reframed as either redemptive inspiration or suspicious calculation, depending on the publication's angle. The corporate backlash intensified as major shareholders expressed concern. 2 institutional investors requested private meetings with board members excluding Ethan. A prominent business analyst downgraded VanceCore stock, citing leadership distraction and unconventional governance decisions as key concerns. By the time the board convened, market pressure had hardened into concrete demands. Gerald Hoffman presented them clinically. "And the situation requires definitive action. We propose a 3-month leave of absence for Mr. Vance, during which the chief operating officer would assume interim leadership. Ms. Monroe would transition to a consultant role without direct report to the CEO. A clear separation between personal relationship and professional responsibilities must be established." "And if I decline?" Ethan asked. "And then we put it to shareholder vote at the emergency meeting requested by our institutional investors. The preliminary count suggests they would support removal of current leadership." The threat was clear. Everything Ethan had built over 15 years could be taken from him, not because of business failure, but because his personal choices defied conventional expectations. That evening, in Lila's apartment, they weighed their options. "I won't step aside," Ethan insisted. "Not when the company is finally embracing meaningful innovation. Not when our rehabilitation technology is helping actual people." "This isn't just about the company anymore," Lila reminded him, hands resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "It's about these 4 children and the environment they'll be born into." "Exactly. What example do we set by surrendering to prejudice? By allowing others to decide our worth based on where we came from rather than what we've created together?" Lila considered his words. Throughout her life, first as a dedicated teacher, then as a homeless woman fighting to maintain dignity, and now as a corporate advisor challenging institutional thinking, she had consistently faced judgment for existing outside prescribed boundaries. The pregnancy merely added another dimension to a struggle she knew intimately. "But then we face this directly," she decided. "And no hiding, no apologizing, no pretending our relationship is less than it is." The resolution brought clarity to both. Whatever challenges awaited, from corporate boardrooms to delivery rooms, they would navigate them together without compromise or concealment. The shareholders' meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in VanceCore's main auditorium. By 7 a.m., financial journalists and tech reporters had filled the press section, cameras poised to capture what many predicted would be Ethan Vance's professional downfall. At 8:30, Ethan entered through a side door, impeccably dressed in his signature minimalist suit. What surprised the waiting crowd was Lila walking confidently beside him, her simple but elegant maternity dress a silent acknowledgement of the pregnancy that had sparked the controversy. Gerald Hoffman approached immediately, voice low but intense. "This isn't appropriate. Ms. Monroe has no standing at a shareholders' meeting." "She has every standing," Ethan replied calmly, "and is a key advisor to this company and the mother of my children." The chamber hushed as they took their places at the front of the room. Institutional investors watched with carefully neutral expressions, while smaller shareholders whispered among themselves. The tension was palpable as Hoffman called the meeting to order. "We convene today to address concerns about leadership stability and governance at VanceCore Technologies," he began formally. "And recent events have raised questions about decision-making priorities at the executive level." What followed was a meticulously constructed critique of Ethan's leadership, thinly disguised as objective analysis. Charts displayed stock performance before and after the Nexus failure. Metrics highlighted development delays and project pivots. Every point built toward the predetermined conclusion: VanceCore required new direction uncomplicated by personal distractions. When Hoffman concluded, he turned to Ethan with practiced regret. "Would you like to address these concerns before shareholders vote on the proposed leadership transition?" Ethan stood and approached the podium. The room fell silent, anticipating either a defensive response or reluctant resignation. Instead, he began with a question. "What is the purpose of technology?" The unexpected opening created a ripple of confusion. "When I founded this company, I believed technology existed to solve problems, to make processes faster, systems more efficient, information more accessible. That belief built VanceCore into a global leader, but it was incomplete." He paused, scanning the room deliberately. 8 months ago, my car broke down during a rainstorm. A woman with every reason to ignore a wealthy stranger stopped to help me. That night changed my understanding of what truly matters, not just in technology but in human connection. Ethan gestured toward Lila. "Ms. Monroe joined our company and immediately identified what we had overlooked. Technology must serve humanity, not the reverse. Under her guidance, we transformed our development process to prioritize genuine human need alongside innovation. The results speak for themselves." He displayed his own slides, patient recovery data from the rehabilitation technology, adoption rates from the education initiatives, user satisfaction metrics across previously underserved demographics. The Nexus failure was painful and public, but our response demonstrated something essential about this company's character. We acknowledged mistakes, transparently. We pivoted to more responsible applications. We prioritized safety over spectacle. These aren't signs of compromised leadership, but of evolving wisdom. Ethan's voice strengthened as he continued. "And now about my personal life, which seems to concern shareholders despite falling outside their legitimate business interests. Yes, Ms. Monroe and I developed a relationship. Yes, we're expecting children, quadruplets in fact. These developments occurred alongside the most ethically grounded and human-centered innovation this company has ever produced." He turned directly to the institutional investors. "You're questioning whether personal happiness might distract from corporate governance. I suggest the opposite. Understanding what truly matters in life has made me a more effective leader, one who considers consequences beyond quarterly returns, who builds technology serving genuine human needs." A murmur rippled through the auditorium. This was not the defensive posture many had anticipated. And if shareholders believe VanceCore would benefit from leadership, untethered from human concerns, someone focused solely on market dominance regardless of social impact, then by all means, vote for change. But understand what you're sacrificing: the emerging model of compassionate innovation that differentiates us in a crowded market. Ethan paused, his expression resolute. "However, if you believe that technology should enhance humanity rather than exploit it, that diversity of perspective strengthens rather than weakens us, that ethical leadership creates sustainable value, then I ask for your continued trust." He gestured toward Lila again. "Ms. Monroe is asked to address you directly. I request you extend her the courtesy of your attention." The request created visible discomfort among board members. Allowing a non-executive to speak at a shareholders' meeting broke with convention, yet refusing would only reinforce the perception of entrenched bias. After a tense moment, Hoffman nodded reluctantly. Briefly, Ms. Monroe, Lila approached the podium with quiet confidence. Where Ethan had projected authority, she offered authenticity, the teacher rather than the executive. 3 years ago, I lost my teaching position during budget cuts. Then my mother's illness depleted my savings. Then came eviction, and suddenly I was homeless, not because of poor choices, but because systems failed when I most needed support. Her direct gaze challenged listeners to maintain eye contact. And I share this not for sympathy, but for context. My experience navigating broken systems provides perspective most executives never acquire. I understand firsthand how technology can either expand or limit human potential. She rested one hand lightly on her abdomen. Yes, I'm carrying quadruplets. Yes, this pregnancy was unexpected, but suggesting it compromises Mr. Vance's leadership reveals more about your assumptions than our capabilities. Lila's tone remained measured and thoughtful. And in classrooms, I taught students to question established narratives. At VanceCore, I've applied that same principle to product development. The results benefit not just underserved communities, but all users, and consequently, your investment returns. She concluded with quiet conviction. Judge us by the impact of our work, not the circumstances of our relationship. The true measure of leadership isn't conformity to expectation, but courage to transcend limitation, exactly what VanceCore now represents under Mr. Vance's evolving vision. When she returned to her seat, the room remained silent, not with disapproval but thoughtful consideration. Her words had disrupted the careful narrative constructed against them, replacing abstract concerns with human reality. The subsequent vote witnessed something extraordinary, several institutional investors breaking from predicted positions. Though support split nearly evenly, the final tally maintained Ethan's leadership by a narrow margin. More significantly, smaller shareholders, those who used VanceCore products rather than simply trading its stock, voted overwhelmingly in his favor. As they exited the auditorium, a young software engineer approached them hesitantly. Minister Vance, Ms. Monroe, I just wanted to say thank you. My sister uses your rehabilitation technology after her stroke. It's changing her life. This simple affirmation, amid the corporate power struggle, reminded them why they had fought so hard. Technology wasn't ultimately about stock prices or market dominance, but human lives improved through innovation guided by compassion. 3 weeks after the shareholders' meeting, Ethan and Lila stood on an empty lot in the neighborhood where she had once been homeless. Construction equipment waited nearby while community members gathered for the groundbreaking ceremony. Welcome to the launch of the new Foundations initiative, Ethan announced to the assembled crowd. One a day marks the beginning of a comprehensive approach to addressing homelessness in our city, not through temporary measures, but through sustainable solutions. The project represented something neither corporate philanthropy nor traditional charity had attempted, a holistic ecosystem combining housing, education, healthcare, and employment opportunities designed with direct input from those who had experienced homelessness themselves. When I lived on these streets, Lila explained to reporters, and the services existed in isolation. Housing programs separate from job training, medical care disconnected from mental health support. We're creating an integrated approach where each element reinforces the others. The physical campus would include transitional housing units, permanent affordable apartments, a healthcare clinic, job training facilities, and childcare services, all powered by renewable energy and managed through a cooperative governance model involving residents. What made the initiative truly revolutionary, however, was its technological integration. VanceCore was developing customized systems addressing barriers that traditional services often overlooked: digital literacy training, simplified healthcare, interfaces, education platforms accessible without consistent internet, and employment matching algorithms that identified potential rather than conventional credentials. When technology alone cannot solve homelessness, Ethan acknowledged during his presentation, and that thoughtfully designed tools can multiply the effectiveness of human compassion and community support. The $200 million initial investment, half from Ethan personally and half from VanceCore's foundation, represented more than financial commitment. It demonstrated a fundamental shift in how corporate resources could address social challenges when guided by lived experience rather than abstract theory. And Ms. Monroe designed this initiative based on what would have helped her during her own housing crisis, Ethan explained to potential partners. And every element addresses actual barriers she encountered, not what experts assumed. Some business commentators criticized the project as obsessive philanthropy that diverted corporate resources from shareholder value. Others questioned whether a technology company should venture into social services, but these criticisms diminished as implementation progressed, and early results emerged. Within months, the first transitional housing units opened. Residents received comprehensive support including mental health services, job readiness training, and technological literacy education. Unlike traditional programs that often imposed rigid requirements, new foundations emphasized dignity and self-determination, principles Lila considered essential from her own experience. Many homeless services operate from the assumption that people need to be managed, she explained during a community forum. We start with the belief that people need to be empowered with appropriate resources and respect. As Lila's pregnancy advanced, requiring more physical rest, she channeled her energy into refining the initiative's educational components. Drawing on her teaching background, she developed curriculum addressing both practical skills and emotional resilience, helping participants rebuild not just careers but confidence. VanceCore employees increasingly volunteered at the growing campus, applying their technical expertise to real-world challenges. Engineers who had designed luxury smart home systems created simplified interfaces for supportive housing units. Programmers who had developed complex financial software built accessible banking applications for those reestablishing financial stability. The initiative generated unexpected benefits for VanceCore itself. Employee satisfaction increased as meaningful application of their skills became evident. Recruitment improved as top graduates sought positions with a company demonstrating authentic social commitment. Most surprisingly, the simplified technologies developed for vulnerable populations revealed design principles that improved mainstream products for all users. Designing for the margins enhances the center became Lila's frequent refrain in product development meetings. When we solve for the most challenging circumstances, we discover innovations benefiting everyone. By the 6th month of operation, new foundations had helped 37 individuals transition from homelessness to stable housing and employment. Though modest compared to the scale of urban homelessness, the program's holistic approach showed remarkably higher retention rates than traditional services. More importantly, it provided a replicable model. 3 additional cities requested consultation on establishing similar integrated campuses. Corporate partners inquired about implementing aspects of the technological systems. Even government agencies expressed interest in the data-driven, experience-informed methodology. What began as personal redemption for 2 individuals from opposite worlds evolved into systemic transformation potentially benefiting thousands. The initiative embodied the principle that had brought Ethan and Lila together. Meaningful innovation emerges when different perspectives unite around common humanity. As Lila entered her 6th month carrying quadruplets, the physical demands of her high-risk pregnancy required significant adjustments. Yet even as her mobility decreased, her influence expanded. Not through hierarchical authority, but through the quiet power of demonstrated wisdom. At VanceCore, teams now routinely considered human impact alongside technical specifications. Designers included accessibility features from initial concepts rather than as afterthoughts. Engineers sought input from diverse users before finalizing products. What would Lila ask? Became shorthand for examining assumptions about how technology would function in varied human contexts. For Ethan, transformation manifested in both professional and personal domains. The executive who once calculated value exclusively through metrics and market share now evaluated success through meaningful impact. His legendary intensity remained but had found constructive focus, applying his strategic brilliance to challenges worthy of his capability. "Sir, greatest strength was always your vision," Lila observed one evening as they reviewed plans for their growing family, "and simply needed to direct it toward what truly matters." The couple purchased a spacious home near the new Foundations campus, close enough for Ethan to remain connected to the community while providing adequate space for their expanding family. Against designer recommendations for an elaborate nursery, they created simple, functional spaces reflecting their shared values rather than conventional luxury. Most profoundly, both experienced evolution in identity. Ethan, once defined solely by corporate achievement, discovered purpose beyond professional success. The prospect of fathering 4 children awakened nurturing capacities previously untapped, revealing gentle patience beneath his driven exterior. Lila, who had maintained dignity through homelessness by helping others despite her circumstances, now embraced receiving support without sacrificing independence. The woman who had refused Ethan's money that first night accepted that interdependence, not self-reliance, created genuine strength. Together they faced the future transformed, not into idealized versions of themselves, but into more authentic, integrated human beings. Their unlikely connection had created space for mutual growth that neither could have achieved alone. As they prepared to welcome 4 new lives into a world filled with both privilege and challenge, they embodied the principle that had defined their journey: transformation occurs. Not by escaping our differences, but by bringing them into harmonious relationship, creating something stronger, more beautiful, and more enduring than either could manifest alone. If this story of transformation is inspiring you, share it with someone who needs to hear that second chances are possible. Sometimes life's most meaningful journeys begin with unexpected connections that challenge everything we thought we knew about ourselves and others. As Lila's pregnancy progressed, the couple focused on creating a nurturing environment for their growing family. They transformed the spacious home they had purchased into a sanctuary that reflected both their personalities and values. Each room was designed with care, blending Ethan's modern aesthetic with Lila's warmth and practicality. The nursery became a collaborative project, filled with soft colors and natural materials. Lila chose calming shades of green and yellow, inspired by the gardens they had cultivated together at the new Foundation's campus. Ethan contributed by installing smart technology that would allow them to monitor the room's temperature and humidity, ensuring a comfortable environment for the quadruplets. "These babies will have the best of both worlds," Lila said, arranging plush toys on the shelves. "And a home filled with love and the latest technology to keep them safe." Ethan smiled, appreciating how Lila's vision infused the space with life. And they'll learn the importance of compassion and innovation from day one. As they prepared for the quadruplets' arrival, they also began to consider their roles as parents. Conversations shifted from logistics to values, what kind of family they wanted to create, what lessons they hoped to impart. "And we need to teach them about resilience," Lila said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "And about the importance of empathy and understanding different perspectives. And the value of hard work," Ethan added. "And also the importance of balance. I want them to know that success isn't just about achievement, it's about making a difference." They discussed how to instill these values in their children, envisioning family traditions that would bridge their diverse backgrounds. Weekend volunteering at the community kitchen, family dinners where everyone shared their experiences, and storytelling nights that celebrated both Lila's past and Ethan's journey. As the weeks passed, the couple grew more excited and anxious. They attended prenatal classes together, learning about childbirth and infant care. Lila's confidence grew as she absorbed information, while Ethan's protective instincts kicked in, ensuring they were prepared for every possible scenario. "Do you think we can handle 4 at once?" Lila asked one night, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Ethan took her hands, looking deeply into her eyes. "When we can handle anything together. We've faced challenges before, and this is just another adventure." Their bond deepened as they navigated the complexities of impending parenthood. They shared late-night conversations about their hopes and fears, often laughing at the absurdity of their situation. The billionaire tech CEO and the former homeless teacher were about to become parents to 4 children, an unconventional family that defied societal norms. As the due date approached, the couple focused on practical preparations. They set up a nursery filled with cribs, changing tables, and a plethora of baby supplies. Friends and family offered support, organizing a baby shower that turned into a community celebration. "Can you believe how many people want to help?" Lila marveled as they sorted through gifts. "It's overwhelming in the best way." Ethan nodded, appreciating the outpouring of love. "This is what community looks like, people coming together to support one another." The baby shower became a joyful event, blending their worlds. Friends from Vanscore mingled with Lila's former colleagues and community members. Laughter filled the air as they played games, shared stories, and offered advice on parenting. "Remember, it's okay to ask for help," one of Lila's former teaching colleagues advised. "And don't have to do this alone." Ethan watched Lila interact with her friends, her warmth and authenticity shining through. He felt a sense of pride in the family they were building, not just the 4 babies on the way, but the community surrounding them. As the days turned into weeks, Lila's body changed, and she embraced the physical challenges of carrying quadruplets. Ethan remained attentive, ensuring she had everything she needed: healthy meals, comfortable clothing, and plenty of rest. "Oh, incredible," he said one evening as they prepared dinner together. "Can't believe how strong you are." Lila smiled, her eyes sparkling. "And I have to be. These little ones are counting on me." They attended regular checkups, where doctors monitored the baby's growth and health. Each ultrasound revealed more about their children, 2 boys and 2 girls, each with distinct heartbeats and movements. The anticipation grew with every appointment, and Lila felt a deep connection to the lives developing inside her. "Can you believe we're going to be parents?" she asked Ethan one night, her hand resting on her belly. "It's surreal," he admitted. but I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else. As the due date approached, they finalized their plans for the birth. Lila chose a hospital known for its expertise in high-risk pregnancies, and they arranged for a team of specialists to be present during delivery. Ethan's protective instincts kicked in, ensuring every detail was accounted for. "And you're going to be an amazing father," Lila reassured him as they prepared for the big day. "And just remember to breathe and stay calm." "Easy for you to say," he replied with a chuckle. "You're the one doing all the hard work." The night before the scheduled delivery, they lay in bed, excitement and nerves swirling around them. Lila turned to Ethan, her expression serious. "No matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know how much I love you." "And love you too," he replied, pulling her close. "We're in this together, every step of the way." The day of the delivery arrived, and the hospital buzzed with activity. Lila and Ethan checked in, their hearts racing with anticipation. Family and friends gathered in the waiting area, offering support and encouragement. As Lila was wheeled into the delivery room, Ethan held her hand tightly. "And you've got this," he whispered, his voice steady despite his own nerves. Hours passed, filled with the sounds of medical equipment and the focused energy of the delivery team. Lila's strength shone through as she navigated the challenges of labor, her determination unwavering. Finally, the moment arrived. With a final push, the first baby entered the world, a healthy boy, followed by his sister, another boy, and finally their sister. The room erupted in joy as the cries of 4 newborns filled the air. Ethan's heart swelled with emotion as he held each baby for the first time, marveling at their tiny fingers and perfect features. "When we did it," he whispered to Lila, tears of joy streaming down his face. The hospital staff celebrated the successful delivery, and soon family and friends were invited in to meet the quadruplets. Lila beamed with pride as she introduced each child, their names carefully chosen to reflect both their heritage and the journey that had brought them together. "Meet Ethan Jr., Lila Grace, and our 2 little miracles, Max and Mia," she announced, her voice filled with love. The community surrounding them had become a family, and the joy of the moment was palpable. Friends from VanceCore, former colleagues and neighbors all gathered to celebrate this extraordinary occasion. As the days turned into weeks, the couple settled into their new roles as parents. The challenges of caring for 4 newborns were daunting, but they faced them together, drawing strength from their shared experiences and the support of their community. "Every day is a new adventure," Lila said one evening as they rocked the babies to sleep. "And never imagined I could love this much." Ethan nodded, his heart full. And I never imagined I could find so much joy in the chaos." As the months passed, the couple embraced the beautiful chaos of parenthood. Their home became a lively hub of activity, filled with laughter, late-night feedings, and the occasional diaper disaster. Each day brought new challenges, but they faced them with love and determination. Ethan's commitment to the New Foundations initiative deepened as he recognized the importance of creating a better future for their children. He worked tirelessly to expand the program, ensuring that it would continue to provide support for families facing homelessness. Lila, too, found fulfillment in her role as a mother and advocate. She began developing educational programs for the children at the New Foundations campus, drawing on her teaching background to create engaging and meaningful experiences. Together, they forged a path that blended their personal and professional lives, demonstrating that love and compassion could drive meaningful change. Their journey had transformed not only their own lives, but also the lives of countless others in their community. As they sat together one evening, watching their children play, Lila turned to Ethan. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Ethan smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "From a chance encounter in the rain to this beautiful family, it's incredible." "Life has a way of surprising us," Lila replied, her eyes shining. "And I wouldn't trade this journey for anything." Their story was one of resilience, love, and the power of connection. It served as a reminder that even in the face of adversity, transformation was possible. Together, they had built a foundation for their unconventional family, one rooted in empathy, understanding, and the belief that every person has the potential to create change. If this story of transformation is inspiring you, share it with someone who needs to hear that second chances are possible. Sometimes the most unexpected connections lead to the most beautiful beginnings. The journey of Ethan Vance and Lila Monroe is a powerful testament to the themes of empathy, resilience, and transformation. Their story illustrates how unexpected connections can lead to profound change, not just in individual lives but within entire communities. Through their relationship, They redefine what success truly means, moving beyond traditional metrics of wealth and achievement to embrace a more holistic understanding of impact and purpose. Empathy emerged as a cornerstone of their journey. Lila's ability to see beyond Ethan's wealth and status allowed her to connect with him on a human level, challenging him to confront his own isolation and assumptions. In turn, Ethan's willingness to listen and learn from Lila's experiences opened his eyes to the realities faced by those less fortunate. Together, they demonstrated that genuine understanding can bridge even the widest divides, fostering relationships that inspire growth and innovation. Resilience played a crucial role in their transformation. Lila's journey from homelessness to motherhood exemplifies the strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Despite the challenges she faced, she never lost her compassion or her desire to uplift others. Ethan, too, showed resilience as he navigated the corporate backlash and personal scrutiny that followed their relationship. His commitment to creating a better future for their children and the community reflected a profound evolution in his character. Their story also highlights broader social possibilities. By integrating their personal experiences into their professional lives, Ethan and Lila created a model for how businesses can operate with a focus on social responsibility. The New Foundations initiative not only addressed homelessness, but also demonstrated how technology can be harnessed to empower individuals and communities. Their approach serves as a blueprint for others, illustrating that when diverse perspectives come together, innovative solutions can emerge. The legacy of Ethan and Lila's journey extends beyond their immediate family. They have inspired countless others to challenge societal norms and embrace the power of connection. Their commitment to empathy and understanding has the potential to spark change in industries and communities, encouraging others to prioritize human values alongside economic success. As they continue to navigate the complexities of parenthood and community leadership, their story remains a beacon of hope. It reminds us that transformation is possible when we dare to connect with one another, to listen, and to act with compassion. If you believe in the power of unexpected connections, hit subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss another inspiring story of love and transformation. Join us as we continue to explore the incredible journeys that remind us of our shared humanity and the potential for change in every encounter.